Oh, you're writing another long one. You must have a lot of free time. Who even spends that much time writing such long stuff? You must have some talent. I'm 38 years old and known as a screenwriter, but I've kept that fact hidden from my husband, Ken. I stopped typing for a moment when I heard him say that as he walked in from work. It's amazing how you can just say things like that after coming home. Around me were scattered papers and resources for my screenplay. Outwardly, I supported my husband as a housewife, only telling him I did some work from home. The truth was, I was using my talent to its fullest. It wasn't easy. I struggled every day with the structure and the work. I would hold myself up in the house during the day, writing furiously, or visit bookstores to gather research. There were times when I hit creative blocks, long periods of silence in my writing career. Ken didn't care much about the papers around the house. He just thought I was disorganized. Oh, it's not just a diary. It actually brings in a little income. I knew hiding it wasn't ideal, but I also knew I didn't want to share this part of my life with him. No matter what I said, he would make fun of it. Are you writing something important? He never used to be like this. Well, yeah, sort of. I closed my laptop slightly, hiding the screen. I couldn't focus with him around. Hey, if you've got this time to write all that, maybe focus on being a full-time housewife. If we were living off just your paycheck. I stopped myself before finishing the sentence. I used to be someone who wouldn't back down from anyone before I met Ken. Maybe I shouldn't have started dating him, but he was my first older boyfriend, and that felt special. Hey, get me a beer, will you? He was always asking for things. Ken turned on the TV to watch his favorite sports team and settled deeply into the couch. My team's playing tonight. I can't miss this game. I opened my laptop again, trying to get back to work, but his careless words echoed in my mind, making it hard to focus. He didn't notice, of course. I tried to motivate myself, reminding myself that I couldn't give up. I had loved writing stories since I was a kid, sharing them with classmates and relishing in their reactions. In elementary school, I would often read my stories to my classmates, and I loved seeing how moved they were. Fiona, your story is amazing. I can't wait to see what you do in the future. Thanks. Wait until you hear my next one. It'll blow you away. That praise made me so happy, and I became even more determined to share my stories with as many people as I could. My passion continued as I went to college, where I began making independent films with my friends. I was in charge of the script writing. Watching my screenplay come to life on set filled me with joy. I knew then that this was my calling. I became even more invested in my dream, determined to make it a reality and not let it end as just a dream. I met Ken during my time in the film club at university. He was the leader of the group, and I was a new member. Back then, Ken was charismatic, the center of attention, and always so cheerful. He was popular with everyone. His sharp features and outgoing personality made him the most sought-after guy in our class. I was just one of his many admirers, drawn to him in a way that felt more like admiration than a crush. One day, after a meeting, Ken came up to me. Fiona, your script was really good. I was surprised, since Ken rarely spoke to anyone outside his immediate group. Really? Thanks, Ken. I want to become a screenwriter. You will, I'm sure of it. Back then, he was so supportive. His words made me so happy and fueled my desire to write even better stories. We ended up working on many projects together, and slowly, we became more aware of each other romantically. Our work received recognition within the university, and we won several awards. Each time we won, Ken would say, "Let's dream big together, Fiona." He filled me with hope for the future. Those were some of the best days of my life. We both dreamed of making it big in the film industry. But as graduation neared, reality started closing in. Ken had to choose between pursuing his dream or getting a stable job. His family pressured him to choose stability over ambition. His father was an executive at a major corporation called Future Vision Industries. His family expected Ken to follow in his father's footsteps. Ken was torn, but ultimately couldn't ignore his family's expectations. 6 months into dating, just before we graduated, Ken told me his decision.
I've decided to take a job at Future Vision Industries. I need stability for the future.
His words shocked me. But I thought your dream was to make it in the film world, Ken.
It was, but I can't let my family down.
I had no choice but to accept his decision. He was the type of person who, once he made up his mind, never wavered. I could feel the pain of him giving up his dream, but I knew I had to respect his choice. Even after Ken started working at Future Vision, I continued writing screenplays, vowing to carry on the dream for both of us. I worked hard, determined to succeed, hoping one day I could show him my accomplishments. My biggest goal became turning the independent film we made in college into a real movie. I wanted to see our vision brought to life and shared with the world. I dreamed of having my favorite actors play the roles I had written. But I kept this dream a secret, feeling too embarrassed to tell anyone. After we got married, Ken moved away from the world of theater and film, and even stopped reading his beloved novels. Once our kids were born, I started a blog and did some freelance writing to help support the household. It was a slow process, but gradually, I found my way back to screenwriting. However, when I started my blog, Ken's attitude towards my writing changed. He probably didn't like the idea of me continuing to pursue my passion while he had given up on his. He would come home and say,
"What did you do today? Writing your diary again?"
To him, my blog was just a diary. At least it was contributing to the household income, but Ken didn't understand my dream. He saw it as nothing more than a hobby. I found myself shutting down emotionally, retreating into my thoughts. It was easier not to say anything, because no matter what I said, it wouldn't change his view. I wasn't making enough money to contribute significantly, and at that time, I felt like nothing more than a dreamer, a typical housewife.
Hey.
Ken called out from the bedroom like he always did.
"Can you bring me a beer?"
Get it yourself. Of course he didn't hear me. He just kept flipping through TV channels, acting as if I hadn't said anything.
"You're not busy, right? I heard there's a great book out lately."
For a second, I was surprised. Oh, really? What book?
A coworker mentioned it today.
What's the title?
I don't remember the title, but apparently it's really popular.
My heart was racing. There were a few novels recently getting attention, and one of them might be mine.
They said it might even get turned into a TV show.
My pulse quickened. Could he be talking about my book? What's the genre?
I think it's a romance. People say it's super emotional and realistic. Unlike your pointless diary, it's a real story.
His words stung, but I had heard them so many times over the years that I was used to it. I had learned to listen and stay quiet to avoid unnecessary arguments. Oh, sounds interesting. I should read it.
Yeah, you should. You might learn something from a real writer.
He didn't see it at all. You're right, maybe I will. That night, I sat in bed staring at my laptop. If Ken ever found out that the novel he was talking about was mine, what would I do? Would I ever tell him the truth? The fear of his dismissive attitude made me hesitate. If I told him and he mocked me, it would crush me. I wasn't ready for that. The next morning, I checked my email and saw a message from my publisher. My latest novel was a hit, and they were moving forward with plans to adapt it into a TV drama. The news thrilled me, but it also made me anxious.
Hey, I heard that novel everyone's been talking about is going to be a TV show.
I smiled, trying to stay calm. That's great. I wonder what the story's like.
I'm curious now, too. Why don't you look it up?
Sure, I'll check it out. I knew it was my novel, but I pretended I had no idea. It felt strange not to tell him the truth, but I wasn't ready yet. I found the title. It's called The Echoes of the Heart.
That's the one. My co-writer said it's amazing. Have you heard of it?
Just a little, but I haven't read it yet. I'll check it out when I have time.
Let me know what you think when you do. I'm curious, but I don't have time to read it myself.
While Ken watched TV, I went back to my laptop and continued writing. Seeing his reaction to my work without knowing it gave me a sense of pride. but also a heavy responsibility. A few days later, I received another email from the publisher. The Echoes of the Heart had become a bestseller, and the TV adaptation was confirmed. Tears of joy filled my eyes. The TV show was going to be a 2-night special. Brief, but it was a dream come true.
Hey, that book I told you about, it's definitely getting a TV show. It's a huge deal now.
That's incredible. I'm sure the show will be amazing.
We could watch it together when it airs. I could even talk about it at work.
Sure, let's watch it together.
Unlike your silly diary, this is a real piece of work. Maybe you'll learn something.
Yeah, thanks for the advice. Inside, I felt torn. The excitement of seeing my work adapted for TV and the pain of keeping it a secret from Ken weighed on me. As the air date for the show approached, Ken became more and more excited, bringing it up every time he came home.
It's almost here. I bet this is going to be really something special. You probably won't get it, but it'll be a game changer.
I'm sure it'll be great. When the night of the broadcast arrived, Ken and I sat in the living room together to watch the premiere.
It's starting. Maybe now you'll learn how to write something decent.
Yeah, I'm really excited. As my work filled the TV screen, I felt a surge of pride. Tears threatened to fall, but I held them back. Ken was glued to the screen, occasionally making snide comments.
This is really good. But you couldn't write something like this.
Yeah, it's a really great story. I knew the time to reveal the truth was coming, but I wasn't quite ready. A few weeks after the show aired, I got more incredible news. The novel was being turned into a movie. I was elated, but kept my excitement hidden from Ken. One evening, Ken came home from work holding a copy of The Echoes of the Heart.
Hey, I picked this up today. This is the book I was telling you about.
He handed me the book, not knowing I was its author. Oh, thanks.
And guess what? My favorite actor, Mark Tanner, is in the movie adaptation.
Wow, you've always loved him.
He's amazing. His acting is unreal. You should read the book. You might actually learn something.
It was surreal, having Ken recommend my own book to me. I watched as he settled on the couch and started reading. After a while, he was completely engrossed, flipping through pages eagerly.
This is seriously good. If you could write something like this, maybe I'd actually take you seriously.
Yeah. I had the urge to tell him the truth right then and there, but held back. I couldn't help but wonder if Ken would become even colder if he knew I had written it. He seemed like the kind of person who couldn't help but lash out when stressed. So I just took a deep breath and answered calmly, "You're right." As I responded calmly, I thought back to when I won a small writing award after we first got married. It wasn't a major accomplishment, just a small competition with a predetermined theme, but I was excited to tell Ken about it. When I shared the news, he simply said,
"That's not a big deal,"
brushing it off. I already knew it wasn't anything huge, but hearing it from him was painful. That disappointment stayed with me, a wound that hadn't healed. The next day, Ken came home and started talking about the book again.
You know, I swear, I've seen that book somewhere before.
He seemed exhausted, and for once, he didn't throw in any snide remarks. He went straight to bed, mumbling to himself. It surprised me how close he was to recognizing my work. A few days later, I took the kids out shopping. Our daughters, who are now in middle school, were excited to go out together. The town was buzzing with news about the movie adaptation, and posters for The Echoes of the Heart were everywhere. "Mom, this book is going to be a movie." "I know, it's exciting, isn't it?" I smiled, feeling proud as I watched them chatter excitedly. At that moment, I ran into an old friend from college, Amy. "Fiona, it's been so long. How are you?" "Amy, it's great to see you. I'm doing well. How about you?" "I'm doing fine. How's Ken? Are you two still going strong?" "We're doing okay." "That's good to hear. I've missed you. What have you been up to? Still writing?" "A little bit, here and there." "Hey, have you heard about that book? The Echoes of the Heart?" My heart skipped a beat. Amy always had the knack for picking up on things. Yeah, I've heard of it. It's the one over there, right? Yes, it's going to be a movie. It kind of reminds me of that romance script you wrote back in college. Oh, really? I haven't read it yet, so I wouldn't know. You always wanted to be a writer back then. I wouldn't be surprised if you wrote this. No, that's just a coincidence. I laughed it off, but inside, I was anxious. We ended up sitting down for coffee, catching up on old times. Amy was still her curious self, but I didn't reveal my secret. Later that evening, I came home to find a letter in the mail. It was from the publisher. Inside was the official contract for the movie adaptation, along with invitations to several promotional events. My hands trembled with excitement. It was the first time in my life that I'd felt that kind of joy. But at the same time, fear crept in. What if Ken saw this letter? I quickly hid it, just as Ken walked into the room. What's that? Oh, just a letter, nothing important. He eyed me suspiciously, but shrugged it off and sat down on the couch. Later that night, after Ken fell asleep, I pulled the letter back out and read it again. The movie project was moving forward, and they expected me to attend several events. My mind drifted back to college, to those days when my friends and I worked on our first independent film project. It was my passion for storytelling that had led me to where I was now. Whether Ken understood or not, I would continue to pursue my dreams. A few days later, I received the official invitation to the movie's promotional event. As a writer, I chose not to make a public appearance just yet. I had my own plans for when and how I would reveal my identity. One night, Ken was watching TV when the movie's trailer appeared on the screen. Hey, Fiona, come look. The trailer for The Echoes of the Heart is on. I joined him in the living room, my heart pounding as I watched the scenes play out on the screen. Wow, it's really happening. You should be more interested. This could become huge. He spoke as if he knew everything, but he didn't know the most important detail. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. The night of the event finally arrived, and I attended as one of the honored guests. The energy in the room was electric, filled with fans and industry professionals celebrating the success of the movie. But I kept my identity hidden. I wasn't ready for the world to know who I was just yet. When I got home that night, Ken was sitting on the couch reading the novel again. So, wasting time again. I had dressed up for the event, but before coming home, I made sure to wipe off the makeup and return to my usual self. Not at all. I actually had a pretty productive night. Yeah, right. It's just your dumb hobby anyway. I ignored his comment and replied calmly. It was inspiring. I'm going to keep working hard. That night, Ken did something unusual. Out of curiosity, he wandered into my study, a place he normally avoided. There, he stumbled upon my awards and certificates, all displayed neatly on the shelf. What's this? When I entered the room, I found him holding one of my trophies. A confused look on his face. Fiona, what is this? Where did these come from? I took a deep breath and responded as calmly as I could. Those are from stories I've written over the years. It's nothing really. How many awards do you have? He looked bewildered. It wasn't like him to pay attention to details like this, but now he was hyper-focused. It's from the past. I don't write as much now, just a little here and there. Whatever, it's probably nothing special. Grow up, Fiona. Stop wasting time. He tossed the trophy aside and left the room. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized the time was coming to tell Ken the truth. I needed to be patient just a little longer. In that moment, I felt stronger than ever. I would prove him wrong. The next morning, as Ken was getting ready for work, he couldn't resist making another snide comment. So, you got all this meaningless awards, huh? Talk to me when you've won something real, like the literary award my company sponsors. I was surprised he was still holding on to the previous night's argument, even though it hadn't escalated into a fight. His company's award was prestigious, but I didn't care about winning it. I cared about my own journey. Sure, maybe someday. His words hurt, but I didn't let it show. That evening, when Ken returned home from work, his mood was even colder than usual.
You really don't understand how powerful my boss is, do you?
By this point, I was too drained to argue. I get it, Ken, but I'm going to keep doing what I love.
Yes, sure. Keep trying. It's not like it'll matter anyway.
He headed to bed with his usual condescending attitude, leaving me alone with my thoughts. As Ken grew busier with his company's big literary event, I was also working tirelessly on my next project. The movie adaptation of my book had been a huge success, and I was already planning my next steps. Then one day, Ken came home with an invitation to his company's prestigious literary award ceremony.
So, what are we going to do about this?
I'm going. It's an important event.
Yeah, just make sure you sit quietly and look like a supportive wife.
The night of the award ceremony, the hall was filled with influential people from the literary world. Ken was playing a key role, standing beside his boss as they watched the event unfold. This award was for truly outstanding writers, and the anticipation in the room was palpable. As the ceremony reached its climax, the moment everyone had been waiting for arrived.
And now, we'd like to introduce the winner of this year's most prestigious literary award, the author of the novel that touched millions and is now being made into a film, Fiona S. James.
Ken's eyes widened in disbelief as the audience burst into applause.
Fiona S. James, please join us on stage.
I stood up, walked calmly to the stage, and approached the microphone. The room erupted in cheers, but Ken looked like he had just seen a ghost. Thank you all so much for this incredible honor. The Echoes of the Heart is a story I poured my heart into, and I'm grateful to everyone who supported me. As I spoke, Ken turned pale, finally realizing that I was the author all along. After the ceremony ended, Ken rushed backstage, desperately searching for me. When he found me in the dressing room, his face was a mixture of confusion and anger.
Fiona, you were the writer all this time?
Yes, I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I didn't think you'd understand.
How could I have been so blind? I can't believe you've been this successful without telling me.
I know it's hard to believe, but I had to keep following my dream, even when you gave up on yours. For the first time in years, I spoke to Ken honestly. I felt like a weight had been lifted off my chest, like I could finally be free. I started crying, letting out all the emotions I had kept bottled up. Ken stood in silence for a moment, then sighed heavily.
So you were hiding everything from me this whole time. You're just a liar.
His anger exploded, and the sound of his voice echoed through the room. I stood there stunned, realizing how self-centered he truly was.
Your success has ruined my life. If it weren't for you, I'd be much better off.
I felt a wave of relief wash over me as Ken stormed out of the room. It was finally over. Honestly, I never expected Ken to react like that. His words were the most pathetic I had ever heard from an adult. A few weeks later, the divorce process moved forward, and we officially separated. As the memories of our marriage slowly faded, I found a sense of peace returning to my heart. After our separation, I heard that Ken had made a major mistake at work and had been fired from his job. He became increasingly isolated, and eventually, both his friends and family distanced themselves from him. Meanwhile, I threw myself back into my writing, starting on my next project. The experience of marriage had made me stronger, giving me the resilience to overcome any obstacle. With newfound determination, I focused on the future, ready to take the next step in my life. And so, I continued to pursue the dream that had started during my college days, bringing that independent film project to life. I believe wholeheartedly that a new and brighter future was waiting for me.